tonight's focus is going to be on one of the topics that I am absolutely passionate about, and the guys here are passionate about. So I've got Noel, who's in the UK. I've got Nick, who's in Australia, Fili, who's in Fiji, and Hamish, who is in Canterbury in New Zealand. I'm going to go through World Cup squads. So they've been announced, and Noel, give us your thoughts on Steve Borthwick's training squad selection so far.
Bit mixed. Surprised the likes of Alex Mitchell got left out. Seems to bring a lot of speed to whatever games he plays, and they've gone with like Kerr and Young that typically slow it down. But I know a lot of the teams that I've seen with Borthwick tend to be quite predictable almost in how they play, so it probably is in line with how he plays. Like usual big powerful up front. Whether they throw the ball around much or not, I know they seem to have left out a few creative players, and I don't know. That's probably going to be their stumbling block. I think they'll probably bully the teams that they can bully, and then those that they can't bully, will they have enough nous to play around them? Maybe not.
Who do you think were the obvious submissions that you suspect will be?
I'd say Mitchell's probably the big one. Like whenever he's come on at 9, he always seems to speed the game up a fair bit, and I think that's what they lack a lot of the time. They're a bit predictable in how they play, and say if you can stand up physically to them, you seem to be able to stop them an awful lot. What else was there? Be interesting to see what he does at like 10. I'd still play Farrell, but how much does he use Smith and Ford?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and then Zach Mercer at 8. Surprised he got cut from the
I'm
training.
very surprised he got cut.
Like you don't become player of the year in France one year and then not good enough to play international rugby. I don't think. I think it'd be a bigger mission. Like very athletic and really good ball player, and very much sort of, I think almost like Southern Hemisphere style 8. Will range around the park and make big inroads around the park. So certainly them two, Mercer and Mitchell, would be two bigger missions for me.
Fili, what about you? They've started to name a squad for upcoming games. Thoughts?
For us, for the Flying Fijians, they haven't. We have an extended squad, but they just come back from their first team camp, one of the islands over here. Good squad, predominantly made up of the rugby boots, which is a lot of youth, but also some notable omissions in Leone Nakarawa. It's a bit of a contentious issue, like because Leone plays in Europe with a substantial experience that he has up front. So that, but hopefully we have some of the draw boys could stand up and fill that role. But we just finished our first week of camp, so we are behind. We're very behind in our World Cup prep compared to the other nations there. I think they'll name the team, the PNC squad tomorrow, I think. They'll play against Tonga next week on Saturday in Lotok. But the main concern for everyone, I know from the coaches that I've spoken to, is like any Fijian rugby team is up front or forwards, because the way that because if you're predominantly going to have the draw boys, the draw game plan, they did not dominate up front as of yet, and that was really made clear when we played the Crusaders in the quarterfinal. So if you shut, because World Rugby now, you have to win the battle up front, or at least be able to absorb it, for our backline. We have a really good backline. We have Randra, we have Nathan Levu, but it's just about getting them to gel and play on front forward ball, from a good platform, from a good set. So our number 10, our first 5, that's another. Because we still have 10 volleyball there, because it's also has to do with our own rugby development, because we have so much talent, but it's just getting them to be properly coached from under 16s, where we have to make sure that they get into an academy till they get to the Ndrua is I think probably where Fiji Rugby has to focus on from next year, after they get their accounts in order, get the World Rugby funding again. Because for us, that's the most frustrating thing. So for me, the most disappointing thing is that we lost Vern Conrad. Because I tell my friends that if Vern was a bad coach, New Zealand Rugby Union wouldn't have picked him up to coach the teams. You have to look at it as what it is. Vern's a good coach, and we just didn't have the infrastructure there in order to support the type of coach that he was. We saw it right after, I think outside after 2021, when they 2 test matches with the All Blacks was good. But then, but apart from that, the World Cup squad we'll see when we play Tonga. We'll see if they've spent enough time, which is next week and the week after on the 29th. I think they play on the 29th, 2nd.
Are there any front rows around the world that are playing in different areas that if you could just go like that and bring them home? Yeah. Is there any obvious talent to you that would really bolster that front row?
No. We already have it. So it's I think Mesaki, he played towards the latter end of the Super Rugby for them, but he's probably one of the apart from Solo, he's probably our other premium tight head. But our front row, we'll see when we play Tonga. We'll see when we play Tonga, because we have Tonga, Samoa, then we have Japan, then France, England, and then we go off to the World Cup. So because we beat France in 2018, then lost to Uruguay in the World Cup. So
yeah.
So we have to be really careful.
Can't wait to see that journey start. It's going to be awesome leading into the World Cup. It's a pretty big run. Nick, what about the Australians?
Well, it hasn't started too well, has it, boys? So after Pretoria, God, I love seeing Hamish just smile at me all the way there from New Zealand. Just before, we're just having a wee chat before. I'm not too bothered, and I'm not saying that it's some sort of false bravado. It was an awfully big task to have a returning coach in Eddie Jones, a returning Quade Cooper from a long-term injury, a new game plan, new squad, going to right into the lair of South African. It's their killing zone, Loftus. That's where they strip you, kill you, gut you, hang you out to dry. Few teams come away from there with anything. So there are some nuggets of positivity in there. Obviously, Korobiti's opening try. We've shown that if we can get quick turnover ball and get it to the edges, we can be dangerous. But basic fundamentals killed us in Pretoria. But there's a lot of rough there. I'll be really interested to see how the boys bounce back from that, how easy they find playing at home, not with altitude, and how they respond. So last night, I think they respond well. Looking more broadly at the World Cup, I think he's actually picked a fairly decent inner squad. There's some train-on squads and some shadow squads, so nothing's definite yet. There's a few guys who certainly just aren't available through long-term injury, like a prop Tom Robertson, who's playing some reasonable rugby for the Force, might be there from an ACL. So there's an example of that. There's a few guys who appear to be on the outer, like Jake Gordon, the Waratahs 9, who've been in the mix under Dave Rennie. Caden Neville, a lock from the Brumbies, appears to be on the outer. So in saying that, Richie Arnold at 33, who's come from nowhere to debut last night, he's obviously got an idea of he wants big bodies, He's obviously looking for set piece dominance. I think he's got the building blocks there. And you could see a game plan that the lads are trying to play to. They just couldn't execute, largely because of how well the South Africans played, but also there was a lot of unforced errors last night as well. And I'll put that down to Russ, but I think the fundamentals are actually are there. They just got to polish away a bit of the rubbish. If we can keep some cohesion and not be too experimental and just stay on the path that they're in, because there's no time for experimenting. I think he's heading the right way. A fellow by the name of Carter Gordon, his test at fly half last night, did exceptionally well. He's from the West Club in Brisbane, which is the club that I coach at, and he always keeps a keen eye on what's happening back at West, which I think is indicative of his character. I don't really know him. I've met him once or twice, but he always keeps an eye on what's going, where he's from. So he's a pretty level-headed sort of guy, and he does acknowledge, from my observations of him, he does acknowledge everybody's kind of helped him get along to where he is, and he's just on this massive learning curve. And I think he's going to be a bit of an X-factor player for us. And I don't really read too much into what happened last night, because we're still expecting guys like Taniela Tupou and Angus Bell to come back in, which when you have, say, an Alan Alatoa and a James Slipper coming on as, say, your finishing front props as opposed to your starting props, and you can start with Tupou and Bell, it gives you a different edge. Our young bloke made his debut last night as well on the flank, Tom Hooper. Really happy to see him get his debut. Got a little bit found out on the defensive edge, but I'm really glad he got his start. There's something about that fella. But I don't anticipate he will be our first choice blindside. Jed Holloway was still to come back into the side. What we really did lack last night was some real old-fashioned physicality. I think Eddie's the type of coach who'll know how to needle them to get that. I don't think we're missing anybody saying out of that squad who could possibly bring that. But it was missing last night for sure. I'm pretty sure it won't be missing against Argentina. But on the whole, I think he's got the squad.
Excellent. Hamish, how are these Kiwis doing?
It's a tricky one, really. We had a big one this morning, last night your time, but we're still not settled on our combinations or who's our first choice midfield, who's our first choice loose forwards. Do we have a big oost that's going to, big guy that's going to carry hard and hurt bodies at 6? Brazil was pretty handy today, but can he be consistent at it? And is he our first choice? Like we're 60 days away from our game against France, first pool match, and there's a lot of questions around that team. There was 4 Crusaders players. Did I mention the Crusaders won the Super Rugby this year for the 8th time in a row? I think.
I thought it was about the 500th time in a row. The way you were talking.
Yeah. So who'd they beat, Craig? Anyone know how they got on? There was only one starting Crusader and 3 in the reserves. So, that can't be our finished product, surely. And if it is, then I think we're a long way off going deep in the World Cup with that team. So
that's what happens when you get a coach who played and coached the Chiefs, man. What are your thoughts on the 15 that played against Japan then? Who you expect to come across?
Right, good question. I think we've actually put. What's that?
Are there spaces up for grabs in that 23 to playing 23 for the first team?
Well, I think they missed an opportunity not playing Sean Stevenson. I think he would have been a good add, a good chance to give him a crack. Bowden Barrett hasn't had a great couple of years, and I'll be surprised if he's in our 23 at the World Cup. I think he's going to be there